My name was Ahmad. I was an imam in a revered mosque in London, a voice of authority in a community that prided itself on its faith. I wore my traditional robes with dignity, but beneath that surface a storm raged. I stood before my congregation, guiding them in prayer, yet as the words left my lips, I felt an emptiness. A gnawing doubt sat in the pit of my stomach, whispering that something was amiss. Was anyone listening? Was I truly connected to the divine? Days turned into restless nights, as the weight of my unvoiced questions pressed heavily on my soul. The tranquility of my life was shattered one fateful night when a moment of sheer chaos brought me face to face with the unexplainable. I found myself in a near-death experience, wandering through a desolate void, where despair mingled with a glimmering light that beckoned me forward. That light was Jesus. In that transcendent encounter, I heard my name called, a sound so personal it pierced through years of ritual and tradition. I learned that beneath the surface of my faith lay a struggle, a spiritual war being waged not just in my heart, but across the globe. For the first time, I saw how organized belief could not only free, but also control. I was trapped in a system that manipulated souls under the guise of faith. The implications of this revelation shook me to my core. As I returned to life, the world I knew became a cage, and my revelations a burden I couldn't bear to share with those who still revered me. My community turned its back on me, labeling me a traitor for questioning the very foundations of their faith. But deep within me, a fire ignited, a call to action. I could no longer whisper my truths in silence. I needed to broadcast them. Today, I stand on the precipice of change. I invite you to join me in unraveling the layers of deception that surround us. Where are you watching from? What time is it? I want to know your journey, and if you catch a glimpse of the truth in what I share, subscribe to Truth from Beyond. Together, let us illuminate the darkness and embrace the light. The revelations are just beginning, and they might just change everything. Ahmad. I've lived in this neighborhood my entire life. Born and raised under the shadow of the mosque, the echo of the call to prayer has always been a comforting soundtrack to my daily existence. My routine was simple. I'd wake up before dawn, wash my hands, face and feet, and let the water awaken my spirit. I'd bow in prayer, my heart steady with conviction that faith is what binds us, what makes us whole. But as years went by, a weight began to settle in my chest, a whisper of doubt that threatened to upend my whole world. It was an ordinary Friday, the sun flaring behind the buildings, casting long shadows over the street. I was heading to the mosque to lead the sermon, the khutbah. My heart raced, not just with anticipation, but with an unsettling feeling that something was off. Was it the knowledge of the elite's hidden agenda, the way they manipulate the faith for their gain, or perhaps a deeper truth bubbling beneath the surface? I couldn't pin it down, yet it gnawed at my soul, an itch I couldn't scratch. As I stood there, surrounded by the familiar faces of my community, I felt that heaviness coalesce into a darkness. And then it happened. Right before I was about to speak, a blinding light engulfed me. I was no longer in the mosque. Instead, I found myself standing on a vast plain, the air shimmering with an ethereal glow. In that moment, I understood. This was no ordinary experience. I was in the presence of Jesus. His gaze was piercing, filled with compassion yet unyielding. He began to reveal truths, devastating revelations about the world, about our community, about myself. It was as if every question I had ever asked, every doubt I harbored, was being laid bare before me. He spoke of a spiritual war that raged around us, unseen forces pulling strings, orchestrating chaos in a way that divided us, that silenced the very essence of our humanity. I saw images, wars ignited by falsehoods, communities torn apart by the very leaders we trusted. He showed me how the elite orchestrated conflicts, using technology not for the betterment of society but as a tool for manipulation. Deception was their currency, and I realized just how blind we had been. My heart ached not just for my own blindness but for the souls of my fellow believers, trapped in a web of lies, clinging to a faith twisted by fear. Time seemed meaningless in his presence, but urgency surged through me. He implored me to awaken, to share what I had seen. I saw visions of the future, a society teetering on the brink, an awakening that was essential yet perilous. The truth he shared was a double-edged sword. It could either liberate us or lead to divisive turmoil. I felt the weight of responsibility pressing down on my shoulders. How could I return and convey this revelation without sparking dissent? Would my community accept this truth, or would I be cast aside as a conspirator, a fool for preaching a message they may not want to hear? The brightness intensified, and just as suddenly as I had arrived, I felt the ground beneath me shift. I was back in the mosque, gasping for breath. The faces around me were staring, expectant and confused. The moment was both familiar and foreign, as if I had crossed a threshold I couldn't see. My heart was racing, my mind swirling with the gravity of what I had witnessed. I could no longer stand before them unchanged. This was the moment of reckoning. I had to share the truth, but with every word, I felt the fear of rejection creeping in. The spiritual war wasn't just out there. It was right here, in this room, in every heart struggling against the invisible forces of deception. I took a breath, ready to confront not just their disbelief, but my own transformation. I've always been seen as a pillar of strength in my community, a 35-year-old imam carrying the weight of tradition on my shoulders. Each Friday I'd walk through the familiar streets, the sun kissing the rooftops, preparing to lead my people in prayer. But inside, beneath the robes and verses, I felt an unsettling void, an emptiness that gnawed at my spirit. Despite my devotion, a profound sense of discontent lingered, a whisper that something was deeply wrong, not just within my heart, but in the very fabric of our society. I carried out my role dutifully, yet there was an inner struggle to find deeper meaning, deeper truth in the rituals I performed. My life changed one unforgiving evening, a night of heavy rain that seemed to mirror my own turbulent thoughts. I was driving home from a community event, the streets slick and glistening under the streetlights, when a vision seized me. Suddenly my car veered off the road, and in a blink I was enveloped in darkness. For a moment I felt weightless, floating in an abyss that stripped away all senses. I was gripped by fear, yet somehow calm, as if this was a passage, a threshold calling me towards something unimaginable. And then, in the vast void, I encountered Jesus. The light he emanated was not blinding but inviting, filling me with an overwhelming sense of love and understanding. It was as if every question I had ever pondered was being answered in that moment. He showed me visions of the world, a battlefield marked not by weapons, but by the spiritual war waged against our souls. I saw flashes of reality, the interconnectedness of humanity laundered through deceit, and the hidden agenda of those in power, the elite pulling strings from the shadows while we remained oblivious, grasping at illusions. What struck me the hardest were the revelations about the state of our society. Jesus revealed how fear and division were sown intentionally to keep us weak, perpetuating cycles of ignorance, anger, and despair. I saw leaders manipulating faith for their gain, wars igniting over lies, the lives of innocent families shattered as collateral damage in a game of power. This deception was pervasive, and the anguish it caused my heart was deeper than any I had known. The weight of truth was almost unbearable, but I knew it was a truth that had to be shared, a beacon of light piercing through the darkness that enveloped my community, urging me to awaken. As I floated in this divine communion, urgency flooded me. I realized now that my role as a spiritual leader was not just to guide my congregation in ritual, but to shake them awake from this slumber, to unveil the truth of their existence, to show them the stark reality of the choices we faced. A choice between awakening or remaining pawns in a game dictated by unseen forces. The messages I received were clear, but they filled me with dread. How would I take this urgent truth back with me? Would they embrace it? Or would they cast me aside as a heretic, a voice lost amidst the tumult? Just as the questions flooded my mind, the light began to fade, and I felt reality tugging at my consciousness. I was jolted back to the present, gasping for breath in my car, splattered against the steering wheel amidst rain and chaos. The realization of what had transpired crashed over me like a wave. The encounter with Jesus left me changed irrevocably. As I staggered out into the rain, soaking wet and trembling, I knew that I had a mission now, one that transcended tradition, a mission to confront the spiritual war hidden beneath the surface of our daily lives. I took my first step into the alley where my community thrived, the weight of revelation heavy on my shoulders, sensing that my journey was only just beginning. As the Friday prayers began, I stood at the front of the congregation, feeling the familiar rituals wrap around me like a warm blanket. But this time, something was different. A restless energy buzzed beneath the surface, an unsettling feeling gnawing at my consciousness. I delivered the prayers, reciting words that had been passed down through generations, yet my heart felt heavy, burdened by the knowledge that my words were falling on deaf ears. It was as if I was speaking into a void, a dark expanse where souls were trapped by their own complacency. Deep down, I felt a growing chasm between my role as an imam and the profound discontent brewing in my heart. In the quiet moments between prayers, I turned my gaze inward, wrestling with questions that had haunted me for years. Was I merely a puppet in a play, reciting lines without understanding the true significance of the message? I witnessed the community, like so many others, caught in a cycle of habit, following the rituals without grasping their essence. I sought clarity in my solitude, but the more I searched, the more lost I felt. I found myself questioning the very foundation of my faith, wondering if I was fulfilling my purpose, or if I was simply a bystander in a spiritual war that raged unnoticed beyond the surface of our peaceful lives. Then came the evening of that fateful day. I was sitting alone in my room, the weight of silence pressing down on me as shadows crept into the corners of my consciousness. I felt a sudden wave of dizziness, my heart racing as a blinding light washed over me. In an instant, I was no longer in my home. I was enveloped in a realm of pure light, standing before Jesus. The depth of his gaze pierced through my doubts, transcending language and culture. He spoke not in words, but in visions that opened my eyes to the deeper truth of our existence, a truth saturated with revelations of hidden agendas orchestrated by the elite, manipulating the fabric of society. In that sacred moment, he unveiled horrors that had long been concealed. I saw the tangled roots of deception woven into the very institutions we trusted. Wars fueled by greed, technology used as a weapon, the division among us stoked intentionally to sow chaos. These weren't just political strategies. They were tactics in a profound spiritual war, a battle for our souls fought in the shadows. Each revelation shook me to my core, forcing me to confront the reality of my complacency. I realized the urgency of the awakening that was required, not just for myself but for my community, a call to rise above ignorance and open our eyes to the manipulation that enslaved us. As the truth swirled around me, I felt a mix of horror and determination. Jesus urged me to recognize my role, to share what I had seen and felt, to be a guiding light in the dark. Yet the burden of this revelation felt immense. How could I return to my community and articulate these profound truths without being dismissed? Would they even believe me? The fear of losing their respect and trust gripped my heart, yet I understood that silence would only perpetuate the lies that had suffocated our spirits. My journey was no longer about simply leading prayers. It was about igniting a movement toward awakening, a challenge that would require both courage and faith. In that moment of clarity, the light around me began to dim, and I felt myself being pulled back, the familiar sights of my room reappearing as reality enveloped me once more. I gasped for breath, the weight of the revelation still clinging to my heart. I knew I had to act quickly. The urgency of sharing these truths surged within me, propelling me toward action. I could not ignore the revelations, nor could I remain a passive observer in the spiritual war that encroached upon us all. As I steeled myself to confront the duality of my existence, the imam who had become a watchman, poised between faith and awakening, I understood that the next steps would define not just my journey, but the future of my people. The night before, the sermon felt heavier than usual. I remember driving through the familiar streets of London, the weight of the day pressing down on my chest, echoing the restlessness that plagued my soul. My thoughts were a tangled mess. A recent unease had settled in, a questioning of everything I believed. I could feel the shadows creeping in, the problems of the world echoing in my mind. Suddenly, in an instant, the world around me shattered. A violent crash enveloped me in darkness, shoving me into a void that was both terrifying and oddly serene. As I slipped away from consciousness, I found myself in a desolate desert. It was strangely still, disorientingly silent, yet it pulsed with an undercurrent of distress. My feet sank into the hot sand, and I felt lost, vulnerable in the vast emptiness. Then, amidst the shadows around me, a radiant light appeared. Warm and inviting, it stirred something deep inside me, something long buried beneath disappointment and doubt. I stepped closer, and that's when I heard my name. Ahmad. The voice called, rich and alive. It was Jesus, standing before me in all his glory. The sight of him filled me not just with awe, but with the realization that I was part of something much larger. In that moment of union, he revealed truths that shattered my perceptions. I saw the intricate deceptions woven into the very fabric of belief systems. All religions, including my own, manipulated by the elite to maintain control over the masses. The designs of those in power, the hidden agendas that stifled true awakening, began to unfold before me like a sinister tapestry. My heart raced as the enormity of this knowledge sunk in. These weren't merely ideological battles, but a deep spiritual war for the essence of humanity itself, a war fought in the hearts and minds of people blissfully unaware of the forces at play. As the revelations deepened, I was inundated with visions of our world engulfed in chaos. Wars fought not for freedom, but for profit. Families torn apart by division, and fear instilled as a weapon to keep us compliant. I saw leaders who harnessed faith as a tool, bending it to serve their ambitions, all while sowing seeds of discord and doubt in communities. This discovery didn't just shake my sense of reality, it called me to action. The urgency in Jesus' voice echoed through my being. The truth must be shared, Ahmad. You must not remain silent. I could feel the weight of expectation resting heavily on my shoulders. What would this truth demand of me? The thought of confronting my community with these revelations filled me with dread, yet it sparked an awakening I could no longer ignore. Fearing I would be misinterpreted, ridiculed, or even ostracized, I stood at a crossroads. Yet the clarity I felt in his presence assured me that to silence this truth was to betray the very essence of my calling. I saw myself not just as an imam, but as a beacon, albeit flickering, struggling against the winds of deception that sought to extinguish it. Jesus' light faded, and the desert began to shift beneath me, pulling me back toward my reality. I could feel the vibrations of the world intensifying, a cry for awakening. My heart raced. I had to return, not just to fulfill my role as a spiritual leader, but to become a catalyst for change. The responsibility I now bore felt monumental, but the urgency behind my mission urged me toward action. I could no longer stand on the sidelines as the world burned, manipulated by forces unseen. The darkness of the desert gave way, and just like that, I found myself back in my car, gasping for breath, confusion enveloping me as I tried to grasp the magnitude of what had just transpired. My heart pounded in my chest, and I realized I'd been given a mission, a divine revelation that demanded to be shared. What would I say to the congregation? How could I clarify the importance of this awakening without being perceived as delusional? I understood the perilous path before me. The spiritual war I'd witnessed would soon play out in my own community, and I knew I had to prepare myself for the challenge. With every ounce of determination, I embraced the weight of truth pressing upon me, ready to forge a new path toward enlightenment, however daunting it may be. When I returned to life, everything felt different. I was back in the same world, but I was no longer the same Ahmad. The revelations from my encounter with Jesus burned brightly in my psyche, yet they felt like heavy chains that bound me to an unsettling reality. I walked into my home, greeted by curious glances from my family, their eyes searching for the familiar man they once knew. But in their gaze, I felt the distance grow, a chasm widened by my newfound beliefs. It was as if I had crossed an invisible line, stepping into a realm they couldn't comprehend, and I was terrified of what that meant for me. My first few days back were surreal. As I attempted to share the truth, to explain the spiritual war one had witnessed and the hidden agenda that lay beneath our beliefs, I was met with disbelief and hostility. "You've lost your way, Ahmad," they said, shaking their heads, incredulous. It stung to hear those words, each one a dagger in the heart of my awakening. I thought my family would rally around me, that we could navigate this path together, yet they responded with rejection. Friends I had known for years suddenly turned their backs, labeling me a traitor for speaking the revelations that had been laid bare before me. This was my community, my life's work, and now I stood alone, an outsider in a world I had devoted myself to for so long. The more I tried to reach out, to articulate my understanding of the spiritual manipulations woven through our faith, the more hostility I faced. "You're dangerously misled," they said. I've never felt so isolated in my beliefs. I found myself haunted by feelings of guilt and solitude, as if each truth I carried was a barrier between me and those I loved. I could see their fear of losing their identity, fear of the unknown, fear of me as a threat to their very way of life. It felt unbearable to realize that in seeking the truth, I had inadvertently drawn a line in the sand where once there was unity. One night I lay awake, my mind racing with the enormity of it all. The visions of Jesus, the faith I had held so dear, now felt like a heavy cloak that smothered me rather than shielded me. I thought of the spiritual war one had witnessed and the revelations I carried inside, and I feared for those who remained ignorant of the deception around us. I knew the elite were manipulating our fears, using the very faith that was meant to liberate us as a tool for control. The weight of this knowledge was crushing. The loneliness seeped into my very being, gnawing at me, pushing the boundaries of my resolve. I wanted to scream, to urge my community to awaken, but where would that leave me? Perhaps the hardest moments were those spent with my family. I could see the worry etched into their faces, the uncertainty of my beliefs waging war against their deep-rooted convictions. At dinner, words felt heavy, each sentence fraught with potential conflict. My children looked at me with a mix of confusion and fear, unsure of the man their father had become. I felt an overwhelming desire to protect them from the tumultuous journey I was on. Yet, at the same time, I knew they had to hear the truth so they wouldn't fall prey to the deceptions I had. I was trapped between love and resolve. Where was the balance between guiding them and allowing them to discover their truth? In moments of quiet reflection, I pondered my role, feeling the weight of destiny tug at my heart. How could I bridge the gap between the revelations I had received and the lives of those I loved? The urgency of the spiritual war loomed large, and I needed them to be a part of it, to fight alongside me in the face of deception. Yet I also feared for their safety. Each day felt like a battlefront, and I was armed only with the truth that had become my burden. I wasn't just fighting for myself anymore. I was fighting for my family, my community, for all those who remained blissfully unaware of the hidden agenda that sought to enslave us. I knew I had to find a way forward, but the path felt murky, and I was terrified of what it would cost. In the shadows of my old life, I found myself wrestling with the truth. The once comforting whispers of prayer in the mosque began to fade, replaced by an internal tumult that demanded resolution. I felt a yearning to understand the revelations I had been given, and curiosity pushed me to delve into the very texts I had been taught to fear. Late at night, with the world quiet and my heart racing, I opened the Bible. Each page felt like forbidden territory, yet the words beckoned me, resonating with a truth I desperately sought but couldn't name. At first, I was cautious. I hid the book beneath a stack of dusty papers, as if the mere act of reading it could lead to dire consequences. But as I turned the pages, I found solace in the stories of others who had walked a path similar to mine. I stumbled upon testimonies from former Muslims who had found themselves on the precipice of faith just like I was. Their words echoed my own struggles, illuminating the internal war one faced, the pull toward a new awakening while fearing the loss of my past. Each story unveiled fragments of the hidden agenda that had ensnared countless souls in deception, and I was gripped by the urgency of their battles, the desire to be part of something greater. In my search, I discovered an online support group, a gathering of souls navigating the turbulent waters of belief and belonging. Each voice was distinct, yet shared a common thread, the quest for truth amidst a tapestry woven with manipulation and lies. I listened as they recounted experiences that mirrored my own, the fear of rejection, the haunting guilt of leaving behind loved ones, and the profound peace that emerged from embracing new beliefs. It became clear that the spiritual war one encountered was not mine alone. We were all in this together, bonded by a shared awakening that defied the social ties meant to bind us to the past. Yet with every testimony I absorbed, dread flickered in my heart. I was caught between two worlds. The comfort and certainty of my old life beckoned me like an old friend, while the new truths opened my eyes to the layers of deception I had once accepted without question. I often lay awake, contemplating the cost of my awakening. The thought of being labeled a traitor haunted me, and the love of my family felt fragile, as if it could shatter with a single expression of my newfound beliefs. The weight of guilt pressed down on me, as did the growing clarity of the spiritual war that raged within and around me. I knew the decision I faced was monumental. There was an undeniable urgency to speak out, to awaken others to the realities, but how could I do that without jeopardizing the very relationships I cherished? The fear of losing the past locked me in a struggle that left me feeling drained. Still, the truth coursed through my veins, igniting a fire I could no longer ignore. Jesus had not merely revealed truths. He had awakened a sense of purpose, a calling that I felt deep in my soul. The deception spread by the elite, the manipulation of faith for control, demanded a response from those of us who now understood. So I continued to learn in silence, my heart racing as I absorbed every word and sentiment shared in the support group. The exhilaration was paired with fear, a duality that danced within me, pushing me toward the brink of a decision I knew would forever alter my path. My journey toward truth felt like a delicate flame, one that could either illuminate the darkness or ignite a blaze that consumed all I had known. As I stared at the flickering screen, my resolve solidified. I had to find a way to forge ahead, to unite my past and present into a force for change. But with each moment spent in contemplation, I felt the urgency of the spiritual war press ever closer, as if time itself were urging me onward. In the depths of my experience, enveloped in the warmth of divine light, I realized this wasn't merely a moment of revelation, it was a profound call to action. After encountering Jesus, I was ignited with an urgency that coursed through my veins, a metaphysical urge to share the truths revealed to me. What had begun as an internal quest for understanding transformed into a compelling mission, a mission to awaken others to the realities of the spiritual war that raged around us. The danger of such an endeavor was undeniable. I could lose everything, my family, my community, perhaps even my life. But the weight of silence felt heavier than any threat, dragging me to the precipice of a decision that would forever alter my existence. The visions I received were so vivid. I had seen a world infiltrated by deception, where the elite shaped the narratives that guided our beliefs and actions. They held the strings, pulling us into division and distraction, all while veiling the profound truths of our spiritual heritage. I could no longer stand idly by, a silent observer to this grand manipulation. I had experienced an awakening that liberated me from the bonds of dogma I had once accepted without question. The fears I carried about what might happen if I spoke out felt insubstantial compared to the urgency of unveiling the truths hidden beneath layers of deceit. The thought that I could be a catalyst for awakening others fueled my determination. I began to formulate a plan. I would speak openly about what I had learned, about the spiritual warfare that was not just an abstract concept but a visceral reality impacting lives every day. Yet, with each passing moment, the enormity of this mission settled into my bones. How could I convey the magnitude of what I witnessed? The fear of being ostracized loomed large, whispering reminders of the risks I would face. The potential backlash from family and friends who might see my revelations as a betrayal of our shared beliefs. But I also felt the weight of responsibility, a calling to open the eyes of those who remained trapped in the cycle of ignorance. In clandestine meetings with others who had experienced similar awakenings, I found camaraderie. Together we shared our stories, a tapestry woven from threads of fear and resilience, and the realization that we were not alone in this struggle. These discussions deepened my conviction that the spiritual war was being waged not just against belief systems but against the very fabric of human unity. We strategized, hoping to find effective ways to communicate our experiences and the urgent truths we had discovered. As I embraced this newfound community, I felt emboldened by their support, yet uncertainty flickered at the edges of my resolve. Would our voices resonate, or would they be silenced in the face of overwhelming opposition? As I stepped closer to revealing my truth, I grappled with moments of doubt. What would happen when I shared the truths of the hidden agenda? Would the elite's grasp on our lives tighten in response to our awakening? I envisioned the storm that might follow, and the danger it could bring. Threats, ostracism, perhaps even physical harm to myself and those I loved. Those fears were compounded by a fierce inner struggle. The desire to save my community from deception clashed with the instinct for self-preservation. I could sense the threads of my old life fraying, unraveling under the weight of my revelation, leaving me wondering if I could bear the cost of truth. Every time I closed my eyes, the memories of my encounter with Jesus flooded back. The love, the purpose, the urgency. I remembered his words urging me to share the truth, and my heart stirred with an unwavering commitment. I refused to let fear dictate my actions. I had seen the consequences of inaction, the waking nightmare we were all ensnared in. It was time to rise, to stand firmly in the face of deception and let the truth light the way. Each step forward felt electrifying, a dance of courage against the odds. As I prepared to share my story, I felt a blend of excitement and dread wash over me. This was it, the pivotal moment that could either ignite a powerful awakening or plunge me deeper into the shadows. I took a deep breath, knowing the spiritual war was just beginning, both within me and in the world around us. The moment I decided to leave my home felt surreal, like stepping onto a path that had long been hidden from my view. I had spent my life adhering to traditions that once felt monumentally significant, but now they were chains binding me to a past I could no longer embrace. After my encounter with Jesus, a burning desire to spread the truth ignited within me, pushing me forward despite the tumult that lay ahead. I needed to liberate myself, not just from my physical surroundings, but from the fear, the guilt, and the expectations placed upon me. That night, I made the choice to adopt a new name, one that signified this rebirth, this awakening I had undergone. As I walked away from everything I had ever known, an indescribable sense of freedom washed over me, but it was tinged with sorrow. The pain of leaving my family, my friends, and my community clawed at my insides. I could almost hear their voices in my head, the whispers laced with disbelief and anger, declaring me a traitor for abandoning our shared beliefs. Yet at that moment, standing at the threshold of a new life, I felt a clarity that I had never experienced before. The revelation of a spiritual war raging around us, one that demanded my full attention and action. Every step I took felt magnified, imbued with a purpose that was both exhilarating and terrifying. The road ahead was uncertain, yet with each stride I was reminded of the truths unveiled to me during my near-death experience. Jesus had shown me a world profoundly affected by hidden agendas and elite manipulation. I envisioned the division spreading like wildfire across society, people blinded to the larger game being played at their expense. For too long I had been complicit in this cycle, but now I was determined to break free, to be a voice for the truth that others desperately needed to hear. My mission became clear. I would evangelize, not just with words, but through actions that demonstrated the power of this newfound truth. I pictured gathering those who felt lost or abandoned, those who sought answers in a world awash with deception. The urgency of awakening others resonated deeply within me. The stakes were too high. I felt an overwhelming responsibility not just to myself, but to everyone who remained ensnared in the lies promulgated by those in power. It wasn't just about me anymore. It was about reclaiming dignity, understanding, and hope for the many who shared this unmarked journey. Yet, the path of truth is fraught with peril. The fear of rejection loomed over me like a dark cloud, a reminder of the very real threats I would face. I had tasted the sweetness of liberation, but the bitterness of abandonment surged alongside it, and as I prepared to share the revelation of the spiritual war, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was standing on the edge of a precipice. Would my message resonate? Would those who heard it finally awaken to the truth I had uncovered, or would they turn away in fear, blinded by the very deception I sought to fight? In the silence of the night, I resolved to push forward, fueled by the promise of change, even if it meant walking alone into the unknown. Years have passed since I first crossed the threshold from darkness into light, but the journey of transformation remains as vivid as the day I met Jesus. In that moment of divine revelation, my life shifted irrevocably. I stepped away from my old identity, a well-respected imam in my community, to embrace a new calling, one that ignited a passion within me to share the truths I had uncovered. The spiritual war we are embroiled in is not a distant conflict. It is an everyday reality that seeps into every corner of our existence. Each day I awaken with a renewed spirit, determined to set forth the gospel of truth to a world shrouded in deception. In this new community, I found kindred souls who, like me, had caught a glimpse of the hidden agenda laid out by the elite, a blueprint designed to keep humanity divided and afraid. It became my mission to nurture hope amidst chaos, to guide others through the shadows of manipulation and into the light of understanding. Every conversation held the potential to change a life, and I poured my heart into my work. I led discussions, held community events, and even established outreach programs aimed at those who felt lost or marginalized. My journey wasn't just about personal redemption. It became a collective awakening that resonated beyond our immediate circle. I recall countless nights spent beneath the stars, gathered with fellow seekers. We would share our stories, forging bonds formed out of shared pain and revelation. Those moments were sacred, laying bare the struggles we faced against the overwhelming tide of societal norms and expectations. I spoke of my encounter with Jesus, how he illuminated the truths obscured by fear and tradition, and how the oppressive weight of deception in our world felt lighter when shared amongst friends. I could see their spirits igniting with understanding, a glimmer of hope reflecting in their eyes as they began to grasp the enormity of the spiritual war that rages around us. As we sought truth, I was constantly reminded that our battles extend far beyond the personal realm. We are witnesses to a world caught in turmoil, divisions fomented by leaders who exploit our fears for their gain, technology used to surveil and control, wars fought under false pretenses. These revelations fueled my resolve, and I realized that nurturing hope in others was not just a task. It was a form of resistance against the larger forces of deception. My heart raced as I understood the magnitude of what we were battling, an awakening that was as necessary as it was perilous. Despite this, a part of me remained haunted by the past, the family I had left behind, the connections severed by my decision to seek a truth that contradicted everything I had once believed. I wondered if reconciliation would ever be possible as I shared the love and hope I had found with strangers who embraced me, yet my heart ached for my loved ones, still encumbered by their own chains of tradition. I held tightly to the belief that as I continued to awaken others, one day the light of truth would reach them too, fostering healing and understanding. The path remained uncertain, but the sense of purpose surged through me with every connection I made, every heart I touched. Each act of love was a small step toward the ultimate goal, the reconciliation of my family and the complete liberation of our souls from the forces that sought to keep us apart. The moment I encountered Jesus during that near-death experience, everything I thought I knew about spirituality and truth shattered. There I was, lost in darkness, when a radiant light enveloped me, powerful and pure. It was in that overwhelming warmth that I heard his voice, soothing yet commanding, urging me to awaken. In that instant, I realized I wasn't merely facing my mortality. I was facing the very essence of my existence. This profound revelation drew me into a world beyond my understanding, illuminating truths hidden beneath the surface of societal beliefs and religious norms. Jesus began to reveal the intricacies of a grand deception, one that permeated every aspect of our lives. I witnessed how the elite manipulated narratives, keeping humanity divided and distracted from the truth. This wasn't just about power, it was about control, a hidden agenda designed to maintain the status quo. Images flashed before me of wars ignited by greed, communities torn apart by fear, and leaders who wielded faith as a weapon rather than a source of comfort. I felt the weight of the spiritual war on my shoulders, a call to action reverberating through my very soul. The stark contrast between the love he embodied and the chaos of the world became my new reality. Returning from that experience was like stepping back into a dream, yet everything felt painfully real. The confrontation with the truths I had witnessed haunted me in the waking world. I could no longer continue my daily existence, reciting prayers that felt hollow when I had tasted the divine nature of awakening. The freedom that this truth offered was invaluable, yet it came with risks I was not fully prepared to face. I understood that embracing this path meant challenging the norms of my life and the expectations of my family, who remained entrenched in their beliefs. The thought of rejection echoed in my mind, but the pull of transformation was too powerful to ignore. As I started to share my experience, I found myself at a crossroads. I spoke about the spiritual war we were all embroiled in, how the forces of deception threatened to consume our reality. I urged others to question the narratives fed to us, to seek the deeper meaning in their faiths. Yet, as I opened my heart to those around me, I felt their apprehension, their fear of stepping outside the lines drawn by tradition and dogma. For them, my words sounded like rebellion, not revelation. Every conversation became a delicate balance between truth and the risk of alienation, an emotional tightrope walk where one wrong step could send me tumbling back into isolation. Despite the tension, I moved forward, fueled by the hope that change was possible. I gathered with small groups who sought the same truths, and together we delved into discussions about the hidden agenda shaping our world. We dissected the manipulation of technology used as a tool for surveillance and control, reigniting the urgency that had stirred within me during my encounter. Each story shared reinforced the idea that awakening is a communal effort, a call to arms against a tide of division. We ignited sparks of understanding, kindling hope that could ignite a larger movement towards truth and reconciliation, a brighter future that blossomed from the ashes of deception. Yet, deep down, I still wrestled with the impact of my revelations on my family. The weight of their expectations bore down on me, and moments of doubt crept in. What if my quest for truth fractured the bonds we had once shared? I envisioned my loved ones, trapped in their beliefs, unable to see the light that I had witnessed. The spiritual war one fought daily for myself felt more urgent than ever. But would it ever extend to those I left behind? I knew I had to continue this journey, to stand firm in the face of adversity, embracing the transformation that lay ahead. After all, the light of Jesus could penetrate even the most profound doubts, guiding us all towards the truth we desperately needed. As I reflect on this journey, I can't help but feel the weight of what I've learned, what I must share. Just as I found myself thrust into the face of the spiritual battle, I ask you, dear viewer, do you feel it too? Do you sense the unseen forces at work around us, tugging at the strings of fear, division, and misinformation? My encounter with Jesus opened my eyes to a world ripe with deception, and in that clarity, I found my purpose, to awaken others to the truth that has been veiled from us all. We are caught in a struggle that transcends belief systems, a battle for our very souls. But here's the question I pose to you. What will you do with the knowledge you've gained? Will you sit in silence, complacent in the shadows, or will you rise and seek the light? Your experiences matter. Your stories of awakening are worth sharing. I invite you to comment below. Let's create a conversation about this urgent call to action. You are not alone in this. Together, we can illuminate the darkness. If this testimony resonated with you, I urge you to subscribe to Truth from Beyond and hit that notification bell. Your subscription helps spread these vital messages and ensure that those who seek the truth can find it. What lies ahead is not just another video. It's a journey into wisdom that could change your life and the lives of those around you. In our next video, we'll delve deeper into another astonishing personal story, one that reveals miraculous encounters that can further illuminate our paths. Don't miss it. Remember, every step forward in truth is a step away from deception. Thank you for staying with me until the end. I'm Ahmad, and as we navigate this tumultuous terrain together, remember, you are a beacon of hope, and the truth is always waiting to be embraced.